So, toda study the cell structure and organization. So, when I grew up, I always asked my question, kuti zvinhu what makes a human being, kuti ko munhu akabva kupi, anozvarwa sei, and it always intrigued me kuti munhu mukadzi anoita nhumbu, then mwana anotokura, then mwana kanotanga kari katokotoko, then kotokura otoita zihombe. And my biggest question was, kana munhu akakura, where is all that coming from? And that was my biggest question. And then I found an answer. So the answer is this. We look at the basic unit, which is called the cell. Are we together? So cell redu rine structure, and then that cell redu rinoti akatanga kuwanda, akamultiply, akawanda, akaita ma things ekuti anosiyana siyana, triteseri, they will organize themselves into becoming a body. Triteseri, ndo paunoona munhu anokwanisa kuti akakuvara pane papo panovharika po pacloser down. Triteseri, papano closer up, pari kucloser up nenyaya yereason yekuti there are cells being regenerated, and then they close that up. And saka we want in this lesson to study the structure of that basic unit, which is called the cell. We want to study the structure yayo, then structure yayo ichatiudza kuti why does it behave the way it behaves. Why is it ukakwara panovharika? Tritesi, why is it mwana kana achidya anokura obvaita munhu mukuru? Tritesi, why is it kuti munhu anoti paanoti achikura paipai anoeja and then munhu anobva achembera? All of these can be answered if we now begin to understand the cell on its own and looking at its structure. So, chekutanga, what you're supposed to know is from our first point, all plant and animal cells, all plants and animal are made up of cells. And a cell is a unit of life. That's the basic unit of life. We break down this plant, it will give us cells. My cells ndo anenge akangoarrangewa. We break down these animals, they give us cells. So cells are very important, and then it consists of a mass of matter, which is called the protoplasm. Are we together? So patoita chemistry, we talked of the structure of an atom, and patoita structure of an atom, we look at it, we look at structure, we look at the things zviripo, and those things zviripo zvinodetermine or influence the behavior yema atoms. Now in a cell, we also have things that are within the cell. Are we together? Then these things that are within the cell, they will influence the behavior of the cell. So the general mass that is within the cell, the mass of matter within the cell, is called protoplasm. So if we are to open up a cell, mostly it's called the protoplasm. And so a protoplasm is made up of three key components. The first one is that it has a cell membrane. Are we together? Then it has a cytoplasm and it has a nucleus. So what are we saying? We are saying that first of all, we'll have the cell membrane. Are we together? So this will become our cell membrane. This one is just the basic thing. Then after the cell membrane, we have the cytoplasm. Then after the cytoplasm, we then have a body that controls a lot of things, which is called the what? The nucleus. Are we together? Saka kana tichitarisa cell, there are three basic components. These components will control a lot of things that will happen. For example, ichi chatiri kuti cell membrane ndo saga redu, yanditika tiri kuti zvese zvakaputirwa necell membrane. Saka zvese they are found within the cell membrane. Saka cell membrane rikavhurika, what will happen? Zvinhu zviri mukati mecell zvinobuda. Are we together? Then inside we have the cytoplasm. That cytoplasm yedu iyi inoi inenge yakaita a watery fluid titese, and that watery fluid ine tumwe tunhu twainenge ichase twainenge inato twakawanda wanda. So the protoplasm contains about 70 to 90% of water. Why? Because the cytoplasm is very huge. Cytoplasm is making up a huge component. 90% water, and the rest is made up of mineral salts and organic compounds such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So remember, munhu akadya chikafu chine ma-carbohydrates, munhu akadya chikafu chine ma-fats, munhu akadya chikafu chine ma-proteins. All of these carbohydrates, fats, proteins will create cells. Are we together? So in other words, iwo ukadya ma-carbohydrates, they will be converted to cells. Fats, they will be converted to cells. Proteins, they will be converted to cells. So in other words, that's why uri kuona kuti munhu akadya anokwanisa kudya ma-foods anonzi ma-bodybuilding foods. Achidya ma-foods iwawo achipinda mubody make, those foods they become converted to becoming cells. Aya anenge ari ma-cells at the human body yake. Is that okay? That's why uchiona kuti iwewe plant redu kana riri pasi parinenge rine midzi mune ma-nutrients ari mu-soil medu. Mune ma-nutrients ari mu-soil medu. Parinomwa ma-nutrients iwawo, ma-nutrients iwawo, they will then be converted into what? Into cells. And then you find that the plant grows. So basically, when we look at cells, try to think of this idea that these cells, they are basically there are other components that are being arranged. Then are arranged in such a way anofoma zvatino zvima cells. Then these cells ndo anotanga kukura achiwanda achita a lot of things, and then we come up with what? The plant, and we come up with the animal. Are we together? Then let's look at the structure of the animal cell. So the structure of the animal cell yedu is more like this. And so previously I just gave you the structure of the animal cell, which is just a generalized structure, where we have the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Then now we have this. It is now complicated, right? Wakuona kuti mucytoplasm medu meme, which is this, and this is our cytoplasm here, and zvima fluid zviri around, and that fluid iyoyo wakuona kuti now we begin to have a lot of things, and tatova nezvimwe zviri kunzi izvo besides the nucleus, because we also looked at the nucleus, right? And the other thing that we looked at was the cell membrane, and the membrane which is called the cell plasma membrane. Later on you discover why we call it the cell plasma membrane. Are we together? Then we looked at the cell membrane, the nucleus, and the cytoplasm. Those are the three basic fundamentals of the protoplasm. And then within those three fundamental parts of the protoplasm, we have things that are within, that are inside. And we have things like, let me just use another color. Here we have things like the mitochondrion. It has its function. We have things like lysosomes. We have things like Golgi apparatus or Golgi vesicles and Golgi apparatus. They have their own function. We have things like what? Centrioles. We look at the function how. We have things, we have also things like this part, which is called the endoplasmic reticulum, where we have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and the rough. endoplasmic reticulum. So these are now added, they are called organelles. Now these organelles anoshanda basa rawo raanoshanda, these organelles, they have specialized functions within the what? The cell. So animal specialized functions within the cell, it makes the cell become able to multiply. It makes the cell become able to produce certain things like other proteins, to produce certain things like enzymes. It also governs my events analytica within the cell. We also, so when you look at the animal cell, its structure, one of the key things chaucha notice chiripo is you have to look at issue here, the what? The membrane. Now let's look at the plant cell structure. And so on the plant cell structure, we have a structure like this, where we go back to our basics. We have the plasma cell membrane, and we have the what? The cytoplasm here, and we also have the nucleus here. Those are the three basic ones atataura pekutanga. And now after these three basic ones, there are now things that become different. And these things that now have become different are, number one, you discovered kuti pa cell redu re animal tanga tingori only with what? With the cell plasma membrane. And now here tane ichi black surrounding. Are we together? This black thing that is surrounding is called the what? The cell wall. Are we together? Have you ever discovered kuti body yedu as humans iri very fragile? Kangomarwa kudai so watomarika wakutorwadziwa. But look at the plants. The plants sometimes nyangwa akaitwa rough ndizvozve. That's why you find out a plant redu rine chikoko zvinenge zviripo It's because some of the cells ndizvozve, let's say kuti watora maveg aya ndizvozve, ukamara maveg ndizvozve, ukamapara kudai so, they are still strong. The reason why they are strong, when I mean strong ndizvozve, if you can ukabata skin yako ukada kuidai so ndizvozve, you find out kuti skin yako inongoteka any shape, ukatoipincha kudai so, you can pinch it well. But then ukanotora maveg yako, watora cabbage rako ndizvozve, ukada uripincha kudai so, cabbage rako rakutotanga kutotsemuka pka. Rakutsemuka pka chi pane chinhu chikoko chakaita sei chakaoma, that we call the what? The cell wall. Now that cell walls akawanda. So now they create a wall. That wall iroro rinopa kuti plant redu riti kana rikaita structure ndizvozve ribva rava nestructure yakaita sei yakanaka. Ndo zvinoita kuti maleaves edu abuda akaita maleaves ane structure. Ndo zvinoita kuti plant redu ringe richiti iro kana rakamira rinokwanisa kumira straight, richikwanisa kuzvisupporta rega. We have that cell wall. And then we also have certain things like the chloroplasts. These ones, the chloroplasts. These ones, they are not found in the animal cell, but these chloroplasts, they'll make sure kuti the plant does a process which is known as photosynthesis. These are the things that makes the plant to be green. So these chloroplasts, they are green, and they will make the plant to be green. They are found within the plant cell. And we also have the mitochondrion. The mitochondrion, we will look at its function. So generally, we are saying that an animal cell is like this, circular. A plant cell is like this. It has a more defined shape. Kana ukada kutoitaura ipapapa ringe unokwanisa kutoitaura uchititi yakaita nge rectangle. The shape is more defined and rigid. Now, since taziya the plant cell and the animal cell, now we want to look at the infinite things that are found within. And so the first thing that we want to study is the plasma membrane. So the plasma membrane, tell you plasma where is it coming from? So it's a membrane. A membrane is covering. A membrane covers. Tukuti a membrane ndiyo ndosaga redu rinosurrounda ndizvo then zvimwe zvinhu zvese zvinobva zvapinda mukati. Are we together? So the plasma membrane surrounds the entire cell. It is thin and delicate, which is made up of lipids and proteins. Are we together? So now we said part tikataura tichiti susu we have a plasma what? They are called plasma treatise. Now the reason why they are called plasma treatise is because it contains lipids and proteins. Saka if it contains lipids and proteins, it becomes a plasma. A plasma tukutaura kuti yakaita a mixture iri fluid like treatise, and that mixture is able to what? To become flexible. And it so when we say tinema proteins nema lipids edu tukutaura kuti tine zvakadai so treatise. Let's say we have things zvakadai, and you find out kuti this is a what? Is a structure treatise yakadai. But this structure is made up of what? Tuma lipids netuma proteins, and make up twakadai so they are able to what? To dance around. That is a what? A plasma membrane or a cell membrane. And then this plasma membrane is selectively or partially or semi-permeable. It is selectively or partially or semi-permeable membrane. Number one, it is selective. So when you say that something is selective, it means kuti chinochuza. Is that okay? So now let's say for example apa pane plasma membrane, and then we put our plasma membrane like this. Is that okay? Now we have a substance, let's say give it a red color. We have a substance, okay, select a blue. This substance outside can be able to go inside the cell. So the movement of a substance from outside to inside is controlled by this plasma membrane. Are we together? So it just doesn't enter, it has to be controlled by the plasma membrane. No richard decide kuti chichapinda mukati mesel chi. So ndo patikutaura isusu kuti it is selectively permeable pekutanga titese. It can be selectively permeable, it is selecting, and then it can be partially permeable. Kana takuti partially permeable, it means let's think of something like chisefa, chinosefa, maybe probably hupfu wako or maybe flower yako ine grains mamwe akakura akaita mahombe. So you put a sefa ine tumaburi tudiki. Sapa ukaisa flower yako pamusoro, what then happens? Paunoshika ndizvo flower yese ine maparticles madiki ese achaita achadonha. So partial permeability, it can be in terms of the size. So let's say for example tine wall yedu tobva taita tumaburi tutese tobva taita tumachi. This is the general wall, and saka tine particles edu. We have this particle and we have this particle. Saka tine particles edu kadiki nekahombe. You would see kuti kaparticle rihombe rikada kupinda neapa ndizvo it won't. Why? Because the size yeapa ichi idiki. Saka this one won't be allowed to enter through, and then tikatora kaparticle kadiki aka tikada unokapinza neapa tutese kanopinda tutese. Saka kaparticle kadiki kachaita kachapinda, particle hombe richaita richarambidzwa, and saka particle diki rapinda hombe rarambidzwa. We call that partial permeability, and or semi permeable. Permeable issue yekuti panopindika here. Is that okay? So it controls the passage of food and oxygen into and waste products out of the cell. So we are saying kuti we have food and oxygen. So food and what? Oxygen. They are allowed inside, and it then inside munom, since a cell my activities anoitika umomo, some of the activities we call them metabolic activities. Metabolic activities include anabolism and catabolism. Primarily catabolic reactions are reactions anyanyo producer my waste products. So our producer my waste products, we are saying these waste products are inside the cell, no outside. And the thing to control what enters inside and what goes outside is the cell plasma membrane. How it controls, it can either be selectively permeable or it can be partially permeable. That's how it would what? It would control or regulate what enters and what goes out. And so in this way it maintains a chemical balance with its surrounding medium. Saka food yedu ma chemicals, ma waste ma chemicals. Saka the balance can be what? Can be created, and ma waste achibuda, food achitase achipinda. Then we can have a what? A balance. So which means kuti cell redu kana rine ma waste akawanda, ma waste anoda kuti aburitswe, such that they create space for food, because food ndoyoda kuti ishandiswe with the what? With the cell. So only plant cells, on our next point, only plant cells are surrounded by the cell wall. Only plant cells are surrounded by the cell wall, made up of a component called cellulose. Saka tikatarisisa pane this plant cell redu, we find out kuti we have a cell plasma membrane iri panapandi. That's this one. And then after the cell plasma membrane, we have this black item. Today is what we call the cell wall. Reason why yakaomarara is because of the structure of the cellulose, which makes up a cell wall. Saka question you know where ichifunza ichitaura kuti what is it that makes up a cell wall? What substance makes up a cell wall? So the substance that makes up a cell wall is the cellulose. Then the cell wall is rigid yakaomarara and acts as an important internal support of the plant. Saka internally the plant is being supported, are we together, such that it can maintain its own shape. So let's look at another thing. The second thing that we have to look at is the cytoplasm. So always when we're looking at these things, always refer back to the three major important ones, and which we said it is the cytoplasm that consists. We said a protoplasm is everything really inside the cell. Then that protoplasm, it consists of three things, which is the cytoplasm, the nucleus, as well as the cell membrane. So Pesepa took our cell, always think of those three major things. And now we are looking at the cytoplasm, and we looked at the cell wall, which was surrounding. Now we want to look at what is inside the cytoplasm. So we say that the cytoplasm, it forms the larger part of the cell, and it is made up of 90% water. Are we together? Cell redoring 90% water. That's why it is said that water is life. It is said that water is life. Why is it life? Why do we need to continuously drink water? It's because 90% of the cells, they have water. So primarily tinema cells, my cells it's water. So primarily we are part of what? Water. Are we together? Then it also contains dissolved proteins, sugars, and enzymes. So chikafu icho chiripo anditika proteins nema sugars ndo zvikafu zvinenge zvirimo mostly, anditi. And it also contains these guys that are called enzymes. So later on, you'll find out that these guys their nature is proteins. So in other words, we are saying it contains proteins and sugars. But these proteins ekutanga are in form of food. These proteins, APH2 enzymes, are in form of molecules which speed up chemical reactions. Molecules anoita kuti refine, anoita kuti kana pane activities ese ari kuitika within the cell ese andase anofire. Now, these in the cytoplasm, we have numerous chemical reactions that occur. Are we together? And these reactions, we say that these reactions are called metabolic reactions. So it also contains larger suspended particles of fats and many structures called organelles. So we are given that these guys, they are structures. Are we together? They are structures called organelles. Are we together? So we are saying that the cytoplasm yedu ndeino, and within the cytoplasm no matter kutaura kuti mane organelles aya. These ones are organelles. And if you can look at the plant one, these ones are organelles. Are we together? These ones are organelles where we have the cytoplasm. Saka cytoplasm yako chi tukuti cytoplasm yedu chi tinenge twakata tuma dot. Cytoplasm, 90% of it is supposed to be water. Ndo iri kufoma the what? The cytoplasm. So that's why we call it a fluid. Then under the cytoplasm, we talked about the fact yekuti pane organelles. Now these organelles ndo atati large structures are found within the cytoplasm. Ndo ataura tichitarisa those organelles. And it, so the organelle number 1 yatofana utarisa is the mitochondria. And its singular name is called mitochondria. So have you ever imagined why is it kuti paunodya paya after wadya time you have energy? Where is the energy coming from? What really happened? So the answer to that lies within the mitochondria. Mitochondria yedu in general, that's the powerhouse. Ndimo muri kugadzira simba rese rauchazoona richashandiswa nema cells. And it, so mitochondria yedu, we have to know its structure first of all. Saka structure ye mitochondria yedu, it's a rod-shaped or spherical structures that carry out cellular respiration to release energy. Saka they are spherical. Spherical, it means are circular. These are the mitochondria. They are spherical, circular. Akadaiso. Then we have certain things. Then kana wa A level, you would look at these things that are inside. How do they produce the energy? A lot of energy. So the mitochondria, its responsibility is to produce energy, and it produces energy with a process, and that process is called respiration. So question yobvunzwa, where does respiration take place within a cell? It takes place within the mitochondrion or mitochondria. Then yobva produce energy yedu. Energy yedu ya releaswa is stored in a chemical form which is known as adenosine triphosphate or ATP. That is what is known as an energy carrier molecule. So that energy carrier molecule ndo rinozo spread body medu ndiro. ATP ikaspread body uri kumhanya ndiro zve. ATP paino spread body pepe ndo paunozobva wana energy. Are we together? After respiration. Respiration ichaitika perform ma ATP. Ma ATP anobva zara body. Then ubvunza kuti hapa napa ndine simba rakaita se rakawanda, and you can run. Then papa pekuti wakuchifaila kuti say kumhanya papa waneta waita fatigue, and that fatigue yakonzeswa nekuti ATP yavashoma. And reason why ATP becomes little is because a lot of ATP has been used. now it's lead to saka rate yairi kugadzirwa nayo ATP nerate yauri kuishandisa nayo zvinenge zvasiyana. Wakunyanyoshandisa ATP kudarika chi rate yaita se yairi kugadzirwa nayo. Saka let's say for example iwo per minute uri kugadzira 2 ma ATP but per minute obva washandisa 20 ma ATP, which means kuti pa 1 minute watova mu minus 18, watodya chi 18 ma ATP. Saka body yakunonoka kuproduce chi ma ATP, and then at the end of the day you become fatigued and your body would require you to have a rest. Rest here wakuchibva wachitanga kuproduce mamwe ma ATP, and then ovasvika paanobalansa, then asvika paanobalansa ndizvo wakuchinzwa kuti body yangu I have now regained strength. And it why? It's because of that ATP, the energy carrier molecule rinenge richigadzirwa nekuda kwe respiration. And mind you, tukuti respiration occurs where? In the mitochondrion. And these mitochondrion, they are found both in the plant as well as in the what? Animal cell. These mitochondrion, they are found. Then we go to the second one, which is called the endoplasmic reticulum. And so we'll not talk much about the endoplasmic reticulum, but just know that this, first of all, this endoplasmic reticulum ndo iri kunzi ER, endoplasmic reticulum. Just know that it is an extension from the way? From the nucleus. Are we together? So the nucleus is extending itself, ishinono it at the endoplasmic reticulum. So which means the nucleus and the endoplasmic reticulum, they work hand in hand. So let's go to first point. The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, are layers of membrane folded through the cytoplasm of a cell, forming inner complex surfaces. So these are extended surfaces that are coming from the nucleus. So that then gives you an idea. So since it is an extension, like an extension from the nucleus, which means these guys, they might probably share a common function. Let's say, for example, I say, kuti inini, I am the boss, and I have workers. Workers angu ini, they are an extended part of me, which means I can give instructions so that these workers, they will execute a function. So the function yedu nucleus, it is helped by this endoplasmic reticulum. Are we together? Saka, the ER functions as a pathway for substances to move. That's from where? From one part of the cell to another. The endoplasmic reticulum, it's a pathway for substance to move from one part of the what? Of the plant cell to another. You soon see a lot of things happening. And then we have two types of endoplasmic reticulums. We have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and we have the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Rough yachona inonge ine zvinhu zvinonzi maribosomes. Zvatiri kuti zvimaribosomes, we are saying kuti yakadai handed. Let's say we have something like this, right? We are saying kana yakadai so isina chinhu, we call that the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And then kana ya rough endoplasmic reticulum, we are now saying there are now things being attached to this. And these things attached ipapapa, they are called what? Ribosomes. So when we have ribosomes anenge aka attach pa endoplasmic reticulum, we then now call it what? Rough endoplasmic reticulum. So in other words, indochi rough what? ER, then yepanapa ababa is the smooth what? E what? R. Is that okay? So now let's go to another one, which are the vacuoles. So having understood the endoplasmic reticulum, having understood the mitochondrion, now we want to look at the vacuoles. And the vacuoles are fluid-filled cavities. Cavity. Now this word appear a lot, especially when you talk about my teeth or tooth. And kagomba kanofomewa mukati mezino, it is called a cavity. Titese kaburi, kagomba, kaburi. Titese. Now these vacuoles are fluid filled cavities. Zviburi zvinenge zvine fluid inofiliwa inside umomo. Is that okay? So inside the cytoplasm tikutaura kuti pane zvimacavity zvakaita nge zvimakomba. Titese zvimakomba izvozvo munofiliwa fluid. And it saka this fluid, you're supposed to know what is it. What is it? The fluid that is filled muzvikomba izvozvo. And it now in plant cell we have one large and central vacuole. This contains cell sap, which is essentially salts and sugars. So we say that there's a fluid filled cavities. What is it that is inside those cavities? It is salts and sugars dissolved in water. So when you talk about salts and sugars, tukutaura kuti ndicho chikafu chacho. Salts and what? Sugars. So that's why they are called food vacuoles. And they have those things, the salts and the sugars. Then this vacuole exerts a fairly high pressure, pushing out on all sides and flattening the protoplasm against the cell wall. So now what happens is that isusu tiri kuti here we have our food vacuole. You find out kuti in the animal ndizvo, you see that there is just a small vacuole kadika kanditika. We look at it, but here we have this large what? Vacuole. Are we together? Now this large vacuole, what happens to it is that, let us just stretch here like this. This large vacuole chinoitika ndechekudai so, chekuti pavacuole redu riri large like this ndizvo mune machi salts and mune machi sugars. Are we together? Now these salts and sugars will allow what? Water, H2O, to what? To enter inside. And now when it enters inside, ichi chivacuole chedu chichabva chatanga kufuta. Titese pachotanga kufuta chichabva chatanga kuita chichienda chichifuta chichienda this sides. Are we together? Chikufuta chichienda these what? Sides. Chafuta chichienda these sides. At the end of the day chakutanga kupusha zvinhu izvi, zvinhu zvedu izvi zvese izvi zvakupushwa towards the what? The walls. Titese saka kupushwa kwazvinoitwa, it's a pressure that is caused by the what? By the vacuole. Are we together? Because the vacuole redu rine potential yekuita sei yekusveta mvura, because mune salts. So at the end of the day it becomes pushed to the outside. So you want to continue? It is surrounded by a thin membrane called the tonoplast, which functions just like the plasma membrane. So its membrane, iyo vacuole yedu, its membrane, it's called a what? A tonoplast. That tonoplast is just the same as a what? As a cell membrane or a plasma membrane, but it's a membrane to where? It's a membrane for the vacuole. And then we go to animal cells. We go to animal cells and we are still looking at the vacuole. Pama animal cells yedu, we have small and numerous vacuoles. And tikatarisa panapa, the vacuole yedu, it's what? It's very small and they are numerous. Numerous, it means akawanda. Iro rema plant cells rotachitaura kuti it only has what? One what? Vacuole. But these ones akaita sei akawanda, these are numerous. And are numerous kudaro, there is one other thing about them, is that they are temporal. They are not permanent. Are we together? They are temporal, they are not permanent. Saka you may find in another case anenge asipo, in another case they are there. That's one of the most distinctive distinguishing features aripo between the plant and the animal cell. Kuti mavacuoles edu anenge ari temporal, tritese, and ari small ku animal cell. Then ku plant cell, we have only one vacuole, but it is large. Then let's go to another one. We have the nucleus. Now, first up, we were talking about what is outside. What is outside, zvingofamba-famba, zvingoita zvazvinoita. But we have one thing chinocontrol all the activities that are around that cell, that are inside that cell. Cell iroro kuti ritike kune government. Government yayo inonzi nucleus. So this nucleus will control each and every activity that will happen within the cell. That government is supposed to know each and everything chapinda umomo cell, chaproduced, chaburiswa out, whatever thing. All of them, they are controlled by what? By the nucleus. And remember, government can actually government, control the nation. Government in my law enforcement agents. Tinema purisa, tinema soldier, tine courts, we have city council at a city level, we have various institutions and no controller or no governor the control is within the nation. And so a cell is more like a nation with its nucleus. The nucleus controls everything. So this. Now the nucleus here, it's a spherical body that is surrounded by a membrane called a nuclear envelope. Are we together? A membrane called a nuclear envelope. Now, the nucleus controls all the activities taking place in the cell and is responsible for cell division. Now, when the cell wants to multiply itself, the nucleus is the one that is responsible. Cell iroro kutoti atowanda atoita many cells, it is because of the nucleus. Any activity to happen within the cell is because of the nucleus. Now, within the nucleus, there are, number one, we have chromatin. Now, chromatin is made up of proteins and DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. So we are saying that each and every cell, it has DNA. And DNA iri musel redu rebvudzi yangofananawo iri macells eskin. Any part of your body, it contains the same DNA, because that same DNA, it has to coordinate with each other. Are we together? Now, during cell division, they become very compact and then they are called chromosomes. Then chromosomes carry hereditary materials called genes. Genes are what we call hereditary materials. Genes, they are a specific code that codes for, we can have genes for eye color, we can have genes for skin color, we can have genes for tallness or shortness. Are we together? Now, these genes, they contain chromosomes, but the chromosomes edu anoti kana pasingaitike cell division, they are found akaita like this as chromatin. And it then kana cell division yava kuitika, they become like this. Kana wakambonawo something chakadai ichi, they become something like this, and this thing is called what? A chromosome. Are we together? So pachineta a chromosome like that, chava nema arrangement, and then chava ne arrangement iyoyo, you'd find at a certain point or a certain locus, would find what we call a what? A gene. Are we together? Saka gene redu rinenge chiwanika pa a chromosome. But chromosome yedu kuti ifomeke iwanike yatanga iri chromatin. Pana pauda itika cell division, it condenses becomes chromosomes, which are this one. Then after it are chromosomes like this one, on the chromosomes we have genetic material, which is hereditary. And it panoitika cell division, cell redu parinopwanyika into two. Let's say we had one cell, and that cell iroro robva rapwanyiwa into what? Into two, kuti tane rimwe ukuku tobva taita futi rimwe chi ukuku ari identical. Ndizvozve tane 1 and 2 identical cells. Panoitika that division, ndizvozve there are genes that will be shared. Today the genes that will be shared via what? Issue yemachi chromosomes. And it will look into that pachaita cell division, and you really like the topic because it focuses more on how the division is happening. And then we go to the second point. One or more spherical bodies called nucleus. Are we together? Plural yedu inonzi nucleoli. They are responsible for building proteins. Are we together? Saka inside the nucleus we now have a what? A nucleolus. This one. This one is one responsible for what? For issue yemachi proteins. Are we together? Why are proteins very, very much needed within the body? And they are needed within the body. Why? Because as we had said earlier on, right, if we look at what we talked about earlier on, we said that the cytoplasm contains proteins and it contains enzymes. Enzymes, yeah, they are protein in nature. Now the body, ma-enzymes edu fast track machi ma-reactions, and fast track ma-reactions would need enzymes for reactions to what? To happen. So the cell redu rechaita ma-instructions, those instructions will be relayed in form of enzymes which will code for the production of different types of proteins. No ma-controllero anoita chi nucleus. And inge nucleus yedu in two parts. We have the the nucleolus, which is responsible for these proteins, and we have the chromatin, which is responsible for hereditary material during cell division. So that's the nucleus. That's how it is running its things. And then let's go to another part. We want to now then look at the difference between an animal and a plant cell. Now the difference between an animal and a plant cell is number one. When we talk about differences, especially when it comes to the structure, we look at a structure in common kwese or a structure very different, but we relate the same structure. And saka here would say we in the animal cell, cellulose is absent in the animal cell, whilst it is present where? In the plant cell. Are we together? So that's on number one. And then number three yedu, vacuole yedu is small and numerous in the animal cell, whilst a large and central vacuole is within the plant cell. I think we can have a diagram later so that it makes sense. Vacuole yedu, we talked tikati vacuole yedu apapa we have this one large vacuole ndizvozve, but then uku kutine tuma numerous small what? Vacuoles. That's the difference. And then panema chloroplasts. Chloroplasts, they are absent in what? Animal cells. They are present in what? Plant cells. Because my animal cells, they don't do photosynthesis, so there is no need for chloroplasts. But my plant cells edu, they do photosynthesis, so there is need for chloroplasts. So we'll say that chloroplasts are present in plant cells, whilst they are absent in animal cells. Then we have centrioles. Centrioles edu are present only in the what? Animal cells, and then they are absent in the what? In the plant cells. So ndo comparison yekupa ma differences edu echi a animal cell and a plant cell, which takes us to the revision. And so you work on the revision, you write the questions, then after writing the questions we'll also revise the questions, and then you can get to understand what was really needed.